Good investments, bad investments, and DIY home inspections. That's what we're going to be talking about in this video, so stay tuned. All right, guys, welcome back to part 2 of how to be a successful real estate investor. This is a new series that I'm working on, and in today's video, we're going to talk about making good choices as far as investing goes. We're going to do a little bit on the home inspection side, and we'll just see where things go. The first thing that you guys need to think about before you purchase your first property is your cap rate. Your cap rate is your yearly rate of return on your initial investment. When I say initial investment, I'm talking about your purchase price, any kind of fees associated with that, and whatever kind of costs you have associated with a rehab. Take a 20% cap rate, for instance. Now, let's just say you start out with $20,000, you buy a house, you rent it out, and everything that you make from that house, you invest again into more property with that same 20% cap rate year in and year out. And let's also say that you're saving an extra $500 a month and you're putting that towards your rental property purchases as well. At the end of 10 years, you will own approximately 12 or 13 houses, and you're going to be making about $50,000 a year. You'll also have invested about $250,000. You had your initial $20,000, and then over the course of 10 years, that $500 a month made up $60,000. So a total of $80,000 turned into $250,000 and gave you that passive income of $50,000 a year. But what happens if you increase that cap rate? Well, if you did the same exact thing with a 40% cap rate, at the end of 10 years, you would have approximately 50 houses worth 20 grand a piece. You'd be making about $400,000 a year in passive income, and you would have invested nearly $1 million. So you turned $80,000 into $1 million. That's why cap rate is so important. Now, the only way that I know of to get a 40% return on your initial investment year in and year out is to buy houses that are extremely inexpensive, fix them up, and rent them out. And that's why on this channel, you rarely see me show a house that costs more than $20,000. Now, the second thing you need to think about is what kind of a house are you buying? Obviously, the whole point of buy and hold is that you're going to hold on to this property, and year in and year out, it's going to make you money. And the only way that works is if you're buying a property that is going to last you 40, 50, 60 years. So we're going to dedicate most of this video to talking about looking at your homes, and it's not going to be an exhaustive list, but I'm going to give you the main things that I look at when I go and I inspect houses. The first thing that I always check out is the foundation. You know, in my area, there's always going to be some foundation trouble. I have a certain limit as to, what I deem acceptable and what is just too far gone. For me, it's going to be different for everybody. I am willing to have some level of fall in the foundation. I'm willing to see some settling, some cracking, not a lot though. Really what I'm looking at is, first, how long has this house been here? How much has it settled in that time? If a house is 50 years old and on one side it has fallen 5 inches, then I can expect that in the next 50 years, it's probably only going to fall another 5 inches. So that's something that I look at, and that's perfectly acceptable to me. Now, when you're looking for foundation issues, there's a lot of things that you can look at. You can look at windows. Is the window close to the frame on one side, but there's a bigger gap on the other? Same thing with the doors. Is there a gap on one side? I usually walk all the way around a house and inspect the footer. I'm looking at the ridge line. If it's wavy, then you might have an issue. I'm going to look at the fascia board, and I'm going to look where that fascia board connects to brick or siding. Is it tilted out? I'm going to look at the siding where it connects to the sill wall. Is it flexed out or flexed in? That's an indication that you have some foundation trouble. Depending on how great this issue is, will determine whether or not you're going to buy the house. I also look for damage from termites and damage from carpenter ants. So I'm going to take a screwdriver and I'm just going to poke around the wood all the way around the house in different places. I might get underneath the house if it's on pier blocks, and I'm going to look at that wood and see if there's major damage to the structure from termites or carpenter ants. You might also want to look at the concrete surrounding the house, if there is any, if there's a sidewalk or if there's, a carport, and check and see if they've drilled holes in that concrete. If they're about, ½ inch to an inch wide, they were probably treating for termites, and that means that they at one time had some sort of an issue. Something else that I always take into consideration is the gas lines. If there's natural gas in the house, I'm going to look at the meter. If the meter is missing, depending on how long that meter has been missing before the gas company will turn your gas back on, they may require a pressure test. If it cannot hold a certain pressure for a certain amount of time, then they're going to make you fix the problem before they cut the gas back on. Now, I typically do my own pressure tests. You can get a pressure gauge and a bicycle pump and a couple couplings, hook it up to where the meter would have been installed, and pump it up, and basically do your own pressure test. And most gas companies will let you do that, and when they come out, they just want to see that it's holding pressure. Some of them want to be able to see it hold pressure for 4 pounds at 10 minutes, or up to 12 pounds for 10 minutes. So it really just depends on your gas company and the rules in that area. So the next thing I'm looking for is roof damage. I'll hop up on the roof, I'll inspect it to see how old it is. Are there missing shingles? If there's damage to the roof, I want to see how brittle are the shingles. I'm assuming that it's a shingle roof. And if those shingles are so brittle that when I go to replace a shingle that's damaged, all of those other shingles are going to break, then I just have to assume that I'm going to have to replace the whole roof. So you'll want to just do a brittleness test. You can lift the shingles 90 degrees, and if they crack, well, then you might have to replace either the whole roof or a larger section of roofing, and you'll just want to add that into your calculations when you're deciding if this is a house you want to invest in. After roof damage, I'm just going to look around for major wood rot. Obviously, if there was a leak in the roof, then you're going to see some wood rot, and you'll want to check to see how bad that rot is, and also factor that into your calculations when you're deciding if you're going to purchase a house. I also crawl up in the attic. I look for mold. I also want to check out the wiring. How old is this wiring? Is it flaky paper or cloth wiring, or is it newer wiring? If I do see some mold, you can purchase a mold test kit at Home Depot or Lowe's for around 10 bucks. You can go inside, you can perform the test, and then you can send it off to a lab for about $40, and then they'll tell you how much mold is in the air inside the house compared to how much mold is in the air outside the house. So it's a lot cheaper than a $300 mold inspection. After I look at the roof, I'll go ahead and take a look at the central AC unit. If they do have central air, it might be missing. If it's not missing, if the utilities are on, I'm going to try it out. If they're not on, you can buy a generator and hook it up to the meter and test the electricity if you want to. I don't usually do that, but you can. Typically, if the AC unit looks really old, then I'll just plan on buying a new one. And if I don't have to buy a new one, well, then that's gravy for me. When I go inside the house, I'm going to be looking for water damage. Look at the ceiling, look at the walls, see if there are any stains that have bled through recent paint. Look for water damage on the floor, and anywhere you see any kind of signs that there has at one point been water damage, I tend to bang on the walls pretty good just to get an idea of how solid they are. All right, guys, so that's it for this video. If you found it helpful, please like, share, and subscribe, and join the Facebook group in the description. This is for rental property investors, and I'll see you in the next video.